The National Hurricane Center just bumped this thing to 60% in 48 hours. The National Weather Service issued severe thunderstorm watch number 338 across 14 Michigan counties. And SPC dropped a Day 3 outlook covering 51.8 million people from Nashville to New York. Folks, all of that landed in the last 6 hours. And it tells you the atmosphere is doing something we have not watched in years. Tornado outbreak tomorrow, tropical storm landfall by Wednesday night, and mid-Atlantic severe Thursday. Added up across just 72 hours, and roughly 116 million Americans sit at risk. This is no joke, y'all. From the Spokane fire weather to the Houston flood to the Springfield tornado bullseye. It is Tuesday, June 16th, and we are tracking 3 separate disasters firing up at the same exact time across this country. Starting with what is happening this minute across central Michigan, plain and simple. Severe thunderstorm watch 338 runs until 11 p.m. eastern across 14 counties, which means damaging winds and large hail are expected somewhere inside that polygon before sundown tonight. Lansing, Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, Battle Creek, Jackson, you're all stamped under that watch. Some rotation is showing up in the low levels. That means an isolated tornado or two cannot be ruled out across northern Indiana before nightfall. Fort Wayne, South Bend, Gary, Toledo keep the weather radio cranked through the next 6 hours. This is the same storm engine that fires off again tomorrow, but stronger. Down in the Gulf, the news landing this afternoon is just as serious, if not worse. 24 hours ago, the system off the Texas coast was just labeled Invest 90. This afternoon, the National Hurricane Center upgraded the system to Potential Tropical Cyclone 1. That label is no accident. Which means NHC expects tropical storm watches and warnings inside 48 hours. Mark my words. Sustained winds already at 22 miles per hour, moving northeast at 9 miles per hour. Formation odds jumped from 40% yesterday to 60% today, plain and simple. And the 7-day odds also climbed to 60% for Tropical Storm Arthur to take a name. Now here is something nobody else is telling you tonight that you need to burn into your memory. 3 separate weather disasters are firing up at the same exact time across the country. Out west, red flag warnings and wind advisories from Spokane through Montana into Idaho. In the middle, a moderate risk tornado outbreak loaded for Wednesday in the Midwest. Down south, potential tropical cyclone 1 spinning up with biblical flood rains. Which means rescue resources will be stretched thin from coast to coast tomorrow afternoon, no two ways. That is the kind of squeeze we usually see in late spring tornado season, not the middle of June. Now to roll forward to tomorrow, because that is where the real punch lands across the heartland. The Storm Prediction Center kept that moderate risk locked in for central Illinois into northwest Indiana. Springfield, Peoria, Decatur, Champaign, Bloomington, same bullseye as overnight, no change there. Lafayette, Indiana, you also sit right inside the red zone alongside the Illinois cities. And one more name added this morning, Kankakee, Illinois, sitting in the heart of the warm front zone. Strong to intense long-track tornadoes are the headline threat across that corridor by mid-afternoon. Here's a fact that puts tomorrow in perspective that nobody else has connected yet, folks. Last Thursday, June 11th, an EF3 tornado tore through Streator, Illinois with 140-mile-per-hour winds. Streator sits about 60 miles east of Peoria, right inside the same moderate risk red zone tomorrow, which means the same vulnerable corridor stares down a second violent tornado event in 6 days flat. Mark my words, this storm pattern is not letting up, and central Illinois is the target. Dale, my retired engineer friend over in Toledo, Ohio, listen up because your turn comes Wednesday night. The line of storms moves east across the Ohio Valley after dark Wednesday into early Thursday, which means damaging straight-line winds become the headline by 10 p.m. Your time, plain and simple. Have a flashlight, a charged phone, and the weather radio cranked up before you crawl into bed. Now to hit the engine room real quick so you understand exactly why this is happening tomorrow. Wind shear values from the surface to 500 millibars are running near 100 knots tomorrow. That kind of bulk shear belongs in a March outbreak, not June 12 weeks into baseball season. Combine it with surface dew points climbing past 70 degrees across the warm front. And the significant tornado parameter goes through the roof across central Illinois into Indiana. Translation, long-track supercells stay alive for an hour or more before they collapse into a line. Before I swing to the Gulf story, I need something from you down in the comments tonight. Tell me your county and your zip code in Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, or Ohio. I read every single comment. And I will respond overnight with the exact hail window and tornado window for your specific spots. That way, nobody walks into Wednesday afternoon blind to what is coming for their town. Now, here is something jaw-dropping when you stack up the population maps across the next 3 days. Today's slight risk covers 4.2 million people across the Midwest through sundown tonight. Wednesday's moderate risk zone wraps roughly 60 million Americans inside its outlook contour. And Thursday's Day 3 slight risk covers another 51.8 million across the mid-Atlantic. Added up, roughly 116 million Americans face severe weather inside 72 hours. That is 1 in 3 Americans. Back to the Gulf because potential tropical cyclone 1 is the wild card nobody's talking about enough. The center is offshore of Corpus Christi tonight, drifting north toward the Texas-Louisiana border slowly, which means landfall happens Wednesday night somewhere between Galveston and Lake Charles. Mark my words. Here's the kicker. This thing could actually strengthen over land thanks to upper-level divergence. That is rare for tropical systems, but a 100-knot jet stream overhead bends the rules. Houston, Corpus Christi, Galveston, Beaumont, 3 to 5 inches of rain per hour tonight into Wednesday. Storm totals could push 12 to 15 inches where the heaviest training bands set up. Margaret, the retired schoolteacher down in Lake Charles, your river, is already running above flood stage. The Calcasieu River near Saltwater Barrier and Pine Island Bayou near Sour Lake are both flooding, which means another 6 to 12 inches of rain Wednesday lands on top of completely saturated ground. Get the family photos and the medication to high ground before the sun goes down tomorrow afternoon. By Thursday morning, the remnant low slides east into central Alabama and southern Mississippi. Jackson, Mississippi, Birmingham, Montgomery, you take the next round of biblical rainfall Thursday. By Friday morning, the moisture plume reaches Charleston, South Carolina, and southern Georgia. Atlanta and Charlotte stay on the dry edge. But anywhere south of Interstate 20 gets soaked into the weekend, no joke. Drought-stricken South Carolina could use the rain, but not all in one shot like this. Now flip forward to Thursday because the SPC Day 3 outlook just dropped this afternoon at 2 p.m. Central. Slight risk for severe storms stretches from Nashville all the way up to New York City and Boston. 51.8 million Americans sit under that outlook contour through Friday morning. Cities at risk: Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Baltimore, New York, Nashville, Memphis, Charlotte. Damaging wind gusts are the main hazard as the cold front sweeps east across the Ohio Valley. Even outside the storms, gusts of 35 to 40 miles per hour blanket the entire Northeast. Now, most weather folks have missed this one, but watch New England Thursday afternoon real close. Wind shear values up there are off the charts for June, comparable to early spring outbreak setups, which means brief spin-up tornadoes are possible across Vermont, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts. Connecticut, Long Island, even Scranton, Pennsylvania. Keep your phone alerts on Thursday afternoon. This is not the kind of New England Thursday anyone has on their bingo card for June. Plain and simple. Now swinging west because the fire weather story is getting bigger fast, folks. Red flag warnings cover eastern Washington, the Idaho Palouse, and the Spokane area through tonight. The warnings just expanded north into the Montana Rockies and Cutbank area near the Canadian border. West winds at 20 to 30 miles per hour with gusts to 45 whip across the dry timber. Earl, my retired rancher friend up near Helena, Montana, your wind gusts could hit 70 miles per hour tonight. That is hurricane force wind across western Montana high country. And the brush is bone dry. No two ways about it. No campfires, no chainsaws, no sparks of any kind until the cold front passes through Wednesday morning. Here's another piece of this puzzle that ties the whole continent together for you tonight. Wednesday afternoon, Amarillo, Texas hits 105 to 106 degrees under the heat dome. Wichita climbs to 101, and Oklahoma City brushes 98 degrees under blazing sunshine. Meanwhile, up in Minneapolis and Green Bay, highs struggle to reach the low 60s on Wednesday. That is a 45-degree temperature gradient stretched across roughly 1,000 miles, which means the upper-level jet stream gets loaded with energy like a stretched-out rubber band. Translation: the bigger the contrast, the more violent the storms riding that boundary tomorrow afternoon. Now here is the kicker that nobody outside the weather community is mentioning yet on the news. This Sunday is Father's Day, June 21st, and the severe weather machine is not shutting off. Another low-pressure system rolls into Nebraska and Kansas by Saturday afternoon with all hazards potential. And by Sunday, that energy slides east into the Ohio Valley right over the same beaten-down corridor, which means dads in Indianapolis, Cincinnati, Columbus, Louisville could be ducking storms during the barbecue. Honest to goodness, this is the busiest Father's Day weekend forecast in the Midwest in years. Frank, the retired farmer outside Springfield, Illinois, I want you in the basement tomorrow afternoon. Between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m., your time, that warm front lights up with discrete supercells fast, which means a violent tornado could drop within 50 miles of your farm without much warning at all. Weather radio on, 2 flashlights ready, the truck moved away from the big oak by the barn. Now to hit you with something the long-range models are screaming that nobody is reporting yet. After this storm pulls east, the pattern locks into one of the coldest summer setups in recent memory. A strong positive PNA pattern builds a ridge along the west coast through the end of June, which means Arctic air gets shoved down into the central and eastern United States for 2 solid weeks. June 22nd through the 30th, well below normal across the Midwest, Great Lakes, Northeast. And the European model is hinting at a second Arctic blast for the first week of July. No two ways. Here is the part that will floor you. The best model is putting snowfall on the Montana Rockies June 29th, plain and simple. Yes, snow in the Rockies in late June. That is how locked in this cold pattern is becoming. Now, I want to hear from folks outside the Midwest in the comments tonight, too. If you live in Tennessee, Kentucky, New England, or the Mid-Atlantic, tell me your city below. Because Thursday and Friday bring you a second round of severe storms most folks haven't tracked yet. And I want to make sure nobody on the East Coast gets blindsided on the back end of this thing. Back to the tropics for one more piece before we close this out, folks. If potential tropical cyclone 1 gets the name Arthur, it would be the first named storm of 2026. And the East Pacific Basin is also lighting up by late June with multiple systems expected, which means the next 10 days are loaded with tropical development across 2 ocean basins. That is the kind of June we have not watched since the busy Atlantic seasons of the early 2020s. Now, to hear from folks across the plains, too, while I have you here tonight, Oklahoma City, Wichita, Amarillo, how is this heat treating the outdoor crews this week? And folks in Pacific Northwest Fire Country, drop your air quality readings in the comments below. Because I want to track this stuff coast to coast and feed your reports back into tomorrow's video. Here's one more curveball that ties this whole pattern together for the weekend. After Wednesday's heat blast in the southern plains, the cold front rips south on Thursday afternoon. Raleigh, North Carolina nearly ties an all-time record high at 100 degrees Thursday afternoon. And then by Father's Day Sunday, that whole eastern half flips cold and damp under the trough, which means within 96 hours you go from heat dome to Arctic air across half the country. That is the kind of seesaw that breaks records and flat-out shakes weather rooftops. All right, bringing it all back to that compound math for one final pass tonight, folks. Today, 4.2 million under the Midwest slight risk through sundown. Wednesday, roughly 60 million Americans inside the moderate, enhanced, and slight outlook. Thursday and Friday, 51.8 million more across the Mid-Atlantic Day 3 zone. Stack it all up, about 116 million Americans inside 72 hours. That is 1 in 3 Americans staring down some flavor of severe weather threat by Friday. Add in potential tropical cyclone 1, the Spokane fire winds, and Montana gusts at 70 miles per hour. And you have got a continent on edge from the Cascades to the Carolinas all at once. For Wednesday in the Midwest, know where you shelter the moment the warning siren rips through your phone. Charge every single device tonight. Clear loose patio items from the yard before sunset hits. For Gulf Coast folks, do not drive into water you cannot see the bottom of. Full stop. Out in the Pacific Northwest and Montana, no campfires, no sparks, no fireworks until Wednesday morning. Mid-Atlantic and Northeast on Thursday, keep your phone alerts on and watch the western sky closely. And for everyone planning Father's Day, start watching the Sunday forecast Thursday night, no joke. Here's the bottom line. This is a once-in-a-decade June weather pattern, possibly longer. A 100-knot jet stream over the Ohio Valley. 2 Arctic blasts forecast into early July across the central and eastern states. 3 simultaneous disasters from the Spokane fire weather to the Houston flood to the Springfield tornado. Watch 338 60% potential tropical cyclone 1, 51.8 million on day 3. Next briefing comes Wednesday morning at 6 a.m. Eastern with the freshest model data on the table. Springfield, Peoria, Lake Charles, Spokane, Scranton, keep the radio on and the basement door cracked. And do not say nobody warned you when the warning siren rips across your county tomorrow afternoon.